What's good, YouTube? Man, we back with another reaction video. This for my Laker heads. This for my NBA junkies. This for my older subscribers. This for the young generation to get some information. Kareem Abdul Jabbar and Wilt Chamberlain's beef was the result of two GOATs vying for one pedestal. So I didn't even really know that Kareem and Wilt had beef, bro. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy as fuck. So we gonna tap in. You know what I'm saying? We're going to tap into this video. Make sure y'all subscribe. We're trying to get the 10K subs. I appreciate y'all. With that being said, man, we about to hop right into it, man. This is some new information for me for sure, because I never ever knew that Wilt and Kareem had beef. So we about to tap in, man. Let's get it.
Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem Abdul Jabbar are pillars of NBA history. Two GOATs, no debate about it. 10 years between them, they started out as pals, but when they became peers in the NBA, there was no friendship to speak of. Instead, there were constant comparisons, jealousies, hatreds, and personal attacks through autobiography after autobiography. Before Twitter, you had to get a publisher if you wanted to talk trash. Wilt Chamberlain was a marvel of athleticism and strength.
Make sure I like the video for the YouTube algorithm.
Records with bone-shattering dunks and smooth fadeaways. In '62, he averaged 50 points a game and scored 100 points in a single game. And folks, he did more than score. His rookie year, he averaged 27 rebounds a game. And in 1968, he led the league in assists as a center. The NBA changed some rules because they decided Wilt was so good it was unfair. But he only won 2 titles in his 14-year career, which, when he was playing, defined him more than the metric ton of accomplishments we've gone over. He was labeled a loser, never given the recognition you'd think would be heaped at his feet. For example, the year he scored 100 points in a game and averaged 50 points per game, he was not MVP. Bill Russell was.
Facts. I know my shit.
The majority of his NBA career, he was compared to the Celtics center, who took the role of winner. He had 11 titles to Wilt's 2. And head-to-head, Russell usually came out on top. In retirement, Wilt spoke to that loser label during an interview with Bob Costas.
Was Wilt the loser? And that point.
Never admit what bothers you.
Yeah, rest in peace to the stilt, man.
Easy avenue of attack. Speaking of enemies, let's
get
to know the other half of this beef. Kareem Abdul Jabbar. Kareem was more of a finesse player than a tough guy. The sky hook was his weapon as he took over the NBA in the 70s and 80s. Like Wilt, his dominance caused rule changes. The NCAA banned dunking because Kareem was too good at it.
That's crazy.
Also, like Wilt, Kareem's resume does not fit on one page.
Though his resume one of probably the best ever if you ain't counting Jordan.
On good terms. At age 15, Kareem, named Lou Alcindor at the time, met Wilt, and Wilt took Lou under his wing. He let the kid hang around with him and his friends at jazz clubs, Hearts games, and horse races. Alcindor was completely in awe. Who wouldn't be? A teenager hanging out with an NBA player? When I was a teenager, I'd be in awe of hanging out with a slightly older teenager. Wilt gave Alcindor 2 suits, which Alcindor wanted to keep even though they were sweat-stained and kind of gross. His mom threw them out. Alcindor's first crush was one of Wilt's girlfriends. Oh, by the way, Wilt had a lot of girlfriends. But as Alcindor grew up, he sort of grew away from Chamberlain. As a young man, he had a few formative experiences that made him into an outspoken advocate on social justice and black issues. At age 17, he witnessed police brutality during the Harlem race riots of 1964. 3 years later, as a college student at UCLA, he attended the Muhammad Ali Summit, a meeting of vocal black athletes and political figures throwing support behind Ali and his refusal to be drafted to the Vietnam War. In 1968, Alcindor and other black athletes boycotted the Olympics in a protest of racism. Wilt Chamberlain's politics were different. He was a Republican who very publicly supported Nixon. In '68, the same year Alcindor boycotted the Olympics, Chamberlain attended Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral with Nixon. So, when Alcindor got to the NBA in '69, he wasn't so interested in being friends with Wilt, which irritated Wilt for a number of reasons. Nobody likes to be rejected, and also he felt unfairly judged, and put it kind of bluntly. Safe to say, off the court, they had a pretty icy relationship. And then they had to face each other on the court. The 1971 Western Conference Finals was technically between the Bucks and Lakers, but the real battle was Alcindor versus Chamberlain. When the Lakers earned entry to the Western Conference Finals, the press wasn't that interested in Wilt's 25-point, 19-rebound, 9-assist performance. They just wanted to know how Wilt felt about facing Alcindor next. which Chamberlain didn't love.
Right.
This brief interaction actually speaks to a second reason for early beef. So, remember how Wilt spent the majority of his career being compared to Bill Russell? Well, now Russell had retired, and Wilt was being measured against the new guy. Wilt was denied his chance to just be king, to have people say, wow, look how good he is, no need to compare him to anyone at all, let's just enjoy him. Press during the series focused on which center outplayed the other. The big men split games 1 and 2, even though the Bucks won both. Game 3 was Chamberlain's, and afterwards he talked a little trash against Alcindor. He implied he always outplayed Alcindor. Look at the kid's shooting percentage. In Game 4, Alcindor played like he cut Wilt's comments out of the newspaper, taped them up in his locker, and stared at them for the entire 48 hours between games. He shot 70% from the field, shutting down Wilt's shooting percentage argument. Game 5 saw Wilt get the better of Alcindor, but his team lost the series. Once again, he played well, but ended up the loser. Lou and the Bucks, on the other hand, went on to be the big winners. I should mention that, okay, Lou beat Wilt, but Lou's in his prime and Wilt is 34. That has to be taken into account. Oh, no? It doesn't? At least not for some people at the time, including venerable Bill Russell. But the battle would rage again in the following year's Western Conference Finals. Alcindor had announced he converted to Islam and changed his name to Kareem Abdul Jabbar, which turned some fans off him and onto Wilt. The Wilt-Kareem matchup was the draw of the playoffs, expected to be more exciting than the finals. The Lakers and Bucks split games 1 through 4, but the center duel was one-sided. After Game 4, Kareem implied Wilt was washed up.
So there wasn't no conferences back then or something? So how the fuck is the Bucks playing the Lakers?
Game 5 and 6, Wilt played to make Kareem eat his words.
Well, that couldn't have been no conferences then.
Chamberlain's greatest game as a Laker from start to finish. He blocked 10 shots, 3 of which were Kareem's. Oh yeah, and he clinched a trip to the finals, which the Lakers won. In the locker room, he received a congratulatory phone call from Kareem, like a politician receiving a concession call on election night. Wilt was a winner for that one moment in time.
I'm gonna add. Yeah, this is a good ass video. God damn.
Winning in 72 wasn't a final verdict in the big man debate. Comparisons continued even after Wilt retired, and Kareem usually came out on top. Even the hard numbers didn't sway the argument Wilt's way. And it's not like retired Wilt could defend himself on the court, so he had to find other ways to defend himself / attack Kareem.
Right.
In his 1973 autobiography, Chamberlain said Kareem's rebounding was lacking and put him in a class below Nate Thurman, Bill Russell, and just like some other guys,
That's wild.
Whoever else is around. But the personal slights weren't what bothered Kareem about Wilt's book. In a totally different chapter, Wilt said he found black women to be less sophisticated socially and sexually than white women. Kareem absolutely hated that and said so publicly, which did nothing to slow Wilt's criticism of him, which he kept up throughout Kareem's entire career. Kareem didn't respond for a while. Maybe because he felt his play was enough of a rebuttal. Wilt's opinions on Kareem were not widely held. Abdul Jabbar did finally fight back in 1983 with his autobiography. He took plenty of swipes at Chamberlain's play and reinforced the narrative that Wilt was a loser. He also provided further insight into their falling out. For Kareem, it all went back to comments in Wilt's autobiography, not the comments about him, but the ones saying black women were inferior to white women. It offended everything Kareem stood for and believed in. To Kareem, Wilt was a traitor, and this beef was about more than basketball. But, basketball was still a part of it. A year later, Kareem broke Chamberlain's career scoring record amid celebrations, praise, love, and affection from everybody except Wilt. I mean, Chamberlain went to Kareem's ceremony and tried to play the part of gracious torch passer, but instead came off kinda jealous and petty. He said Kareem deserved the honor, which, is just a statement of fact based on numbers, not really a compliment. And I get being like, hey, where was the fanfare when I set records? Because, remember, Wilt got minimal recognition when he did cool stuff, and even got called selfish when he scored a lot. But he went further than just pointing out the disparity. He denigrated Kareem's accomplishment, saying, well, it's not Bill Russell's rebounding record, which Wilt broke. And also, he casually dropped the opinion that he was still way better than Kareem. His position did not soften 6 years later.
Wilt talking
In
that
fact,
shit.
it took on a life of its own, with Wilt insisting his record would stand if he'd been concentrating on scoring later in his career. So sure, he comes off a little petty, little jealous,
petty.
but that probably makes breaking the record all the sweeter for Kareem. Tired of years of undermining comments, Kareem went after Wilt in his next autobiography, published in 1990. He wrote an open letter to Wilt Chamberlain. The letter spanned many topics, all of them mean. But the thesis of the 3-page letter was Wilt's jealous.
These boys is
Not
crazy.
because Kareem earned more respect and adoration, but because Kareem was a winner and Wilt was a loser. Kareem closed by saying, "People will remember that I worked with my teammates and helped us win. You'll be remembered as a whining crybaby and a quitter, stats and all." Stats
right.
and all. Kareem was attempting to pull the rug out from under Wilt's legacy with the stats don't matter if you don't have titles argument. It wasn't a new argument, which made it worse. Kareem was lending expertise and credence to an opinion that haunted Chamberlain, being a loser. A year later, Wilt published his second autobiography and pretended the letter didn't bother him. Why do I say pretended? Because in his book, over and over again, Chamberlain argues he was better than Kareem, even though Kareem got more recognition. He also kind of went off on Kareem's farewell tour. In Kareem's last year, at each final away game, opposing teams held a pre-game ceremony and gave him some pretty sweet gifts while the rival crowd stood to applaud him. Chamberlain called the tour a contrived fiasco full of material bullshit. He said Kareem should have made charitable donations instead of accepting luxury goods. The extent to which he criticized the tour sounds a bit like sour grapes. But hey, Wilt didn't get a Rolls Royce when he retired, so why can't he at least have some sour grapes? As time wore on, this beef cooled down. With both guys retired, they had less opportunity to talk about each other. And most famous people only get to write one autobiography, so they were already kind of pushing it. In the late 90s, they did a commercial together, and according to Kareem, put their feud behind them on set. He claimed he never hated Wilt, just his politics, which I don't know if I totally believe, but if he believes it, I'll drop the issue. When Wilt passed away in 1999, Kareem had nothing but praise for the Dipper. This beef is unique because external factors created it. If we think of this beef as a full cow, stick with me here, the cow had two hearts. For Kareem, the heart was a difference in politics and an offensive, generalized racial statement from his one-time mentor. For Wilt, the heart was the imbalance of respect from fans, press, and the league. The rest of the cow, the muscles and ligaments and spots and hooves, were generated by how each guy responded to their heart. The post-game trash talk, the decades of undermining comments, the dueling autobiographies, etc.
Right.
And while there was an entire cow of beef between these two phenomenal athletes, it did not hurt their legacies. Wilt's loser stigma was lost to the hard numbers and his tome of accomplishments.
4,000 in
The
a
guy's
season.
a
That's
legend.
crazy, dog.
And Kareem's legacy stands pat as one of the greatest ever.
That shit
Wilt's
crazy.
digs were minority
Four
opinion
block
at
shot-
the time,
block shot
and a
champion.
non-existent opinion
Tough.
now. Their legacies survive the beef because goats can't be taken down by a cow.
Facts. Yo, that was a good ass video, man. All my NBA junkies, man, tap in, man. If y'all enjoyed that, drop a like, man. We trying to get this channel to 10K subs, man. Drop a comment as well, because that helped me out with the YouTube algorithm, so YouTube can push out my videos to like more Laker fans, more NBA junkies. You know what I'm saying? People that like sports beef reactions and stuff like that. Because the YouTube system is crazy, man. They push videos out to you, whatever you looking up, and then they gonna see what you looking up in. But that's for another day. That's for another topic. But we about to wrap it up, man. Y'all stay safe, stay tuned, and we out.